Hey everybody, welcome back to Simply Holy Holiday, a practical guide for making the holidays holy days. And today is day 64, I believe. That's when I'm recording this. And I hope you are doing well with the commitments that you've made, or whatever it is that you have committed to God for the end of the year. And if you haven't, if you feel like you're failing on all accounts, have no fear, because today you're just going to press restart and get right back on. And you're just going to keep doing that and keep doing that and keep doing that, and you too are going to overcome. So last time we talked about growing in the practice of listening to God, trying to get our prayer life to go from always us doing all the talking and the asking, and getting to where it's more of a dialogue, where we're listening. We talked about being still, quieting our souls, Psalm 131. We talked about finding a quiet time where we can really hear God's voice. We talked about how God will use specific times of the day to communicate with us specifically, because He knows how He made us. He made our mind, He made our heart, and He knows the exact time of the day when we are most apt to hear Him. And so taking the time to listen during that day, being mindful of listening during that time of day, or even rearranging our lives to accommodate that time of day. We also talked about learning how to journal when you're journaling. That's really trying to get into the practice of writing your thoughts out, writing to God, and then, sort of pausing and giving Him a chance to speak back and guide you. But while you're doing that, while you're listening, you're also going to have a lot of other thoughts coming into your brain about that really should go on your to-do list. So making sure you have the second piece of paper where you can write down all your to-do list items, and then you can get your mind right back onto God. And I don't want you to beat yourself up about that, or, really think there's something wrong with you. You're quite normal. We all have a hard time learning how to focus and learning and deepening into our intimacy. And it is going to happen if you keep training yourself to be godly. So we talked about, those are all just kind of listening things and growing in that. We're going to be talking about this subject really probably for the duration of the 70 days. And just continually talking about new ways and more ways to be able to hear God's voice and to follow His lead. So I wanted to just keep going in that way and talk about a couple of other things. There are other ways that I feel like God talks to me. One of them is just the dawning idea. And that actually is how I came to my 70-day commitment this time. Was that this concept of learning how to love more deeply and learning how to make people feel loved. Loving people in a way that communicates love to them. This is something God's been working on with me for months and months. It's not something new. And I think that just ruminating on that and praying about it for a long time, it was because of that God was able to give me just this little idea of how to be able to practice that practically as we end out the year. And so when I was on a prayer walk, just right before I started the 70 days, I just got this idea that we, no matter what happens in the morning, I can take that little morning time from the time my kids get up to the time they start school and just go, as far as it depends on me, I'm going to be loving. I'm not going to give myself an out to be frustrated and to meet anger with anger, or to level up, or to, lose my patience or whatever. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say, over everything is going to be love. And no matter what anybody else is doing, as far as it depends on me, I'm going to stay in that loving state. And that has been going great, by the way. I can't wait to tell you about it. I'm really excited. But that was just like a little dawning idea. I was like, that's great. Because what happened is, this is a big concept that God is teaching us, right? He's teaching me how to love. That's a big concept. But He gives you something practical that you can do so that you can practice. To me, that little morning time is like a scale. I play violin, so I play pieces. They're long and complicated and complex, but yet they're all made up of scales. And, just a small tidbit that you can do to practice. I got to practice my scales every day, and it makes the piece. later on, I can play the piece. But this is how I learned to love, is by small chunks of practice. I think it's the same thing. Anything that you do that's physical or tangible, those of you that are practicing waiting on hunger, waiting on the growl to eat, I feel like that God taught me so much when I learned how to physically wait for my stomach to growl before I ate. He was teaching me something much deeper, much more complex, that has actually come to help me this year as I've waited on things that are harder to wait on and waited for longer periods of time, to have a spiritual muscle. It started as a physical thing, but it actually has become a spiritual muscle that I gained through that. So those are just things that we can get from God just from an idea. Sometimes he'll give me a resolution nudge, meaning like he'll bring somebody to mind and I'll think, I need to talk to that person. I may not even be sure why, but I think something's off. I want to make sure that we're okay or whatever. It's just like I call it the resolution nudge. Sometimes at night as I'm laying on my bed, I will recount the day and really ask God, see if there's any offensive way in me. Is there anything that I did today? Anything that any way I missed the mark or got off course, and how can I make that right tomorrow? And maybe even analyzing, how did I get off? What's the lie that I was listening to that led me in that direction? But really kind of going through the day and letting him show me, ways that I got off. Anyway, these are just ways that are not associated with a quiet time, but that they're just times throughout the day when God can speak to me. And I wanted to talk specifically about another way. Today I want to kind of start in to the bulk of what we're going to be doing for at least the next 40 days or so. And that is learning how to listen to God through the Psalms, learning how to rewrite the Psalms and pray through them. And this is a practice that I got into a lot this year. I had a really, really difficult year. I've had a hard year, a lot of ups and downs, and a lot of challenges, a lot of tests. And I feel like that this really saved me this year. Early on in the year, my friend Cito sent me a link to one of Tim Mackey. He's one of the Bible Project guys. Love him. One of his things, which for his church, for the summer they had done this Praying Through the Psalms series. And so I started watching these lessons as he was teaching us how to pray through the Psalms. And of course, he's amazing, because he's like this theologian and he has completely, studied Hebrew and he knows all this really cool stuff. And so I love listening to him. But it really opened my eyes to that what God was doing with the Psalms was that he was teaching us how he wants us to communicate with him. And the cool thing about the Psalms is that I would swear that no matter what you're going through in life, whatever you're feeling, whatever you're experiencing, whatever is happening to you, you can find a Psalm about it. It is crazy. And I know this because basically what ended up happening this year is I started in and I basically rewrote almost every Psalm. Well, I would say 75% of the Psalms I rewrote. The others I just sort of sank into. But I have studied every Psalm this year. I actually just finished Psalm 150 right before I started the 70 days. And I didn't start off with that intention. It's just the way that God led it. And the thing I learned about this is that, God uses this as a model to teach us how to speak with him and how to talk with him. Sometimes I would use it because I couldn't find words of my own. But then sometimes I would just use it because it really it would guide my thoughts and teach me. I thought about Jesus on the cross. When he was on the cross, what were his final words? What was he quoting? He was quoting the Psalms. So we see that these are given to us to help us in our times of distress, times of joy also, and most of the time in life, those two things are mingled anyway. But I really learned a lot through this practice, and I want to encourage you to do it as much as you can. I don't recommend that you try to do all the Psalms. You will. It's a big project. You can do it if you want, but it's definitely not going to fit into these 70 days. It takes a long time. But I think just sort of dipping our toe into it a little bit, I think it will teach us a lot. So I really want to get into this at this point. I learned a lot about I learned a lot through the Psalms. Some things that stuck out to me overall with all of them was just the number of times that David and the other psalmists would say, "How long, God? How long?" And I actually went through and highlighted with one color all the times that it says "how long," because I felt that exact same way. And then another thing that was recurring was this theme of God alone. It is God alone who saves. And I think that was a really good lesson for me this year, because I think I needed to remember it's not God. It's not a God plus program. It's not God and my coffee. It's not God and my discipler. It's not God and my whoever, whatever thing that you go to or whatever people that you go to. Sometimes what God is saying is it's going to be me alone. When Jesus was in the garden, his best friends fell asleep. And then everybody deserted him and fled, and he was left with God alone, even the Son of God himself. So I think that there were many times this year that I was like, I needed to learn that. I don't mean that in a resentful way. I needed to learn it's God alone. Another thing that struck me was the number of times that he would say, "I'm innocent." And I cracked up because there is a scripture that says that all the man's ways seem innocent to him, but I thought about David especially. He obviously is not innocent. He does all these sins. We even know about them, the poor guy. We know about his adultery. We know about the murder. We know about how he counted all the fighting men and his pride and his blah, blah, blah. We know a lot about his failings, but yet many times in the Psalms he would go, "But I'm innocent." And, he was right. And so it was an interesting concept to me just to really ruminate on that. How can we be innocent when we know we have so much guilt too at the same time? So that was cool. And then the last thing is just the concept of the rescue. And so many times they'll say, "Rescue me, rescue me." And there's actually a lot of different Hebrew words I learned later for the different times when it says "rescue me" sometimes. But just that concept that God wants us to call out for his rescue. And that doesn't always mean what we think it means. So anyway, these are some of the concepts that stuck out to me. And what I realized is that praying through the Psalms, we can pray through fear, pain, despair, false accusation, confession, doubt, testing, consequences, insecurity, all of that. We're going to cover all of that. And I think it really helped me, and I'm hoping to be able to pass on whatever helped me to you so it can help you. But I wanted to get into it today. I know we started with Psalm 131 last time, but I really wanted to get into it in full today. And I was thinking, okay, what's the first psalm I want to do? Let's do Psalm 91, because I love Psalm 91. I want to do Psalm 23. I want to do Psalm 3, all these ones that have spoken to me, Psalm 60. But I think where I finally landed was the Psalms of Ascent. And if you're not familiar with that, it's that Psalms 120 through... let me back up. Psalm 119 is this huge book of just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful writing about what the Bible is. And then all of a sudden you get to Psalm 120 and it is, this big. It's so short. And you have all these short little psalms from Psalm 120 to Psalm 134. I didn't know what that was. Well, these are called the Psalms of Ascent. And what they are songs that were written for the Hebrew people that they would sing as they were making their pilgrimage up to Jerusalem for the various festivals. We talked the first time about how there's 3 major festivals every year that the Jews would go to: Passover, Pentecost, and the Feast of Tabernacles. And so they would journey all the way from their hometown where they were, and they would journey up to Jerusalem. And if you look on a map, like if you started at Galilee, you would see that you would travel down to the Dead Sea, which is actually the lowest place on earth. And then, or close to it, I think I might be wrong about the lowest place, but it's very low. And then you would make this ascent up to Jerusalem. It was sort of up a mountain. And it's a symbolic journey. It's a physical thing, like I was talking about earlier, a physical thing meant to teach a spiritual lesson. And that we are on this ascent always to God. And as I was reading these Songs of Ascent, and I got really into it because actually Hillsong has a song out right now called Highlands, and it's really about this concept. And so that caught my eye, and then I started reading about it, and then I started getting into these other Hebrew teachers. I really love to dive deep into the the Hebrew stuff. I love the Messianic Jew stuff. I love to listen to people who know how to make Jesus apply and all, to the Old Testament and all that. It's really cool. But as I was doing that, I started realizing that this really is the journey that we're on. So as I was praying about it, I was like, God, I think this is really what we're doing, is we're making our own pilgrimage. We're making a spiritual pilgrimage away from our daily life, away from the world, and to God. And I think you'll see what I mean as we read through these. So I'm going to start with a couple today, and then we're just going to kind of work our way through some different Psalms. So let's start reading in Psalm 120. I'm reading from the NLT. It says, I took my troubles to the Lord, I cried out to him, and he answered my prayer. Rescue me, O Lord, from liars and from all deceitful people. O deceptive tongue, what will God do to you? How will he increase your punishment? You will be pierced with sharp arrows and burned with glowing coals. How I suffer in far off Meshech. It pains me to live in distant Kedar. I am tired of living among people who hate peace. I search for peace, but when I speak of peace, they want war. And they call this the leaving psalm, and you can see why. Basically, you've got this pilgrim, this guy that's been trying to live for God. He's trying to live for God in the midst of this incredibly pagan place where no one seems to care about God, and he's trying to do what's right. And at some point, you just like, you just get, I'm so done. I'm so done with this culture around me, And this is exactly us. When you say Jesus is Lord, when you decide to line your life up with the Bible, you become a Christian and you go, I'm going to make the Bible the standard of my life. I'm going to try to live every day thinking, how can I be more like Jesus today? And try to land in humility and try to deal with everything righteously, just doing your best to live for God and really enjoying his presence, honestly, not in some sort of like, I got to do this, but like enjoying your relationship with God and enjoying the kingdom and enjoying all the blessings of God. You realize that you are a foreigner in this land, because that's not exactly how the world around us lives. We are strangers in a strange land. We are foreigners. We are sojourners. This is not our home. And so, these times when they would make this pilgrimage up to Jerusalem, it was emphasizing that, you live here now, but your real home is Jerusalem. It's for us. We live here now, yes, in this culture, but our real home is heaven. And so there's times where we just kind of get fed up with this. And I have a great example of this. So this week, my family, we live in a really, really sort of like, what's it called? Americana neighborhood. It's really cool. There's a lot of families and kids. They all play on our block and they play in the street. We don't have a through street, so all the kids are always playing on the street. We have a big what's that called? A basketball goal in front of our house, and so the kids always come down here and play basketball with my son. He's 16. And so it's just that kind of neighborhood. And we always, every year, we have this, it's not a carnival, but maybe like a little festival, street festival for Halloween. And the kids get to get in their costumes. And then they kind of go up and down the street. And the people set out things in their front yard, like caramel apples, or they'll have little games they can play and stuff like that. It's really fun. And my kids have always participated in it. And this year, out of all of our neighborhood, our block was the one that was going to host it. And so our kids were like, yeah, that's awesome. So we were thinking about what we could set up in our front yard. We were really looking forward to it. And then we get the flyer about when it's going to be. And it was scheduled for 9 a.m. to 12 a.m. on Sunday. Sunday from 9 to 12. I was thinking, of all the days that you could have picked, you picked the one day that I cannot change. I can't change it around. And I'm not going to change it around because that's God's Day. That's church. And it just made me so sad. When I saw it, my kids hadn't seen it yet. And I was just so sad thinking, church is just not even a thought for people anymore. It is just, they don't even think about it. Of course, let's have it on Sunday morning. Then my kids saw it and they were like, what? Can't believe this. And they weren't fighting it like they wanted to stay home. They knew we're not going to stay home because we go to church. So we had many opportunities to talk about it. And, I know I'm not really a big Halloween fan anyway, because really as Christians, I'm not sure if we should be, but it's okay. I've just chosen not to fight that battle, and chosen to try to do as much as I can to turn it around, turn it upside down for God. We've always had like a pumpkin carving party. We'd invite people and people would actually come to church from it and become Christians. So I've kind of felt like we were turning it upside down. But, this year it just didn't work out. It just emphasized this whole culture. Sometimes you can just get so fed up with it. Like, I'm trying to give you something great, but you don't want it. He's like, I speak of peace. They don't want peace. They want war, and I feel that way sometimes when you're sharing about Jesus. Like, oh, I'm giving you the answers to life. I'm telling you, it's going to be great. Taste it, see that the Lord is good, But the people around you are like, church. So sometimes you just get tired, And that's one way that he was leaving it behind. And that's something that we're doing too during this time, is we're saying, I don't want to have another holiday season where it's just chaos or, where it's about all this stuff and I'm so busy that I can't even think about the holy parts. I can't even make it holy. And we're rejecting. I don't want to have another debaucherous holiday where afterwards I have a holiday hangover. I don't want to do that anymore. I am saying, no, I'm leaving it behind. And that's what we're doing. We're leaving it behind on this journey. But there's another way that we can look at this too. And this is something that I got. I love the, I think it's called livingword.com, and it's this Messianic Jewish scholar who takes you through the Bible with the Hebrew and the English, and he teaches you all about it. It's so cool. But something I realized is that in the original Hebrew, it doesn't say, rescue me in verse 2, rescue me, O Lord, from liars and from deceitful people. It just says, rescue me from lies and deceit. And it's him owning it. It's actually rescue me from myself. All the stuff that I've fallen into, the ways that I've let lies come into my life and the deceit in my heart and all the stuff, all the gunk, the stuff that we're talking about. Isn't that so crazy? Just he's talking about all the stuff that's worked its way in, and even talks about sort of the consequences of all that and what comes from that, and the being pierced with the sharp arrows and burned with the glowing coals. It's an image that's supposed to warn us, don't go that way. Get out of there. And he's asking God to help him to overcome. That's really what he's asking him to. It's the same thing that we're doing. I'm saying, God, please, please, please get out of me all my pride and the stuff that keeps me from being loving and humble. And there's nothing like God changing you. There is just nothing like it. Because when God changes something that on your own, you can't do it. This is absolutely the grace of God. I mean, when I started Simply Holy all those years ago, I had been overweight for, 35 years. I had been overweight for 35 years. And then all of a sudden, I was able to lose all the weight. That is the grace of God. That's not willpower. That's God power. And, I was thinking this time I have a really cool story to share with you. I'm so excited. So, I've been doing this thing to try to make my mornings loving. And Jay and I sort of have this joke because, mornings can be something. If you're not a parent, all parents know mornings can be something because people are grumpy, they're tired, they're not at the best, and people can say things and it can take off into a bad direction really bad, really quickly. And it's so demoralizing to start your day that way. Well, so Jay and I have this routine where we wake up our kids at the right time. They get up at 7. And then we go on a prayer walk while they kind of pull themselves together and do their routine so that we're not just hovering over them. So we go on a prayer walk, and then when we're coming back, we have this quote. We say, like, no matter what is on the other side of that door, we are going to be loving. It's from Lord of the Rings at Minas Tirith when Gandalf is trying to prepare the guys for war, and they're getting ready to go against all these big orcs and all these crazy people. And he tells the guard at the door, he goes, no matter what comes through that door, you stand your post. Don't leave your post, stand your ground. And so it's sort of a play on that. We're like, no matter what is going on in there, when we get in there, we are going to be loving. Our love is going to abound. So anyway, I was sort of on this journey, and I was really working hard at it. And then one of my kids had an episode of anger, which is a common thing, and just a bad attitude, kind of angry, thing. But but I didn't respond with anger, which that's what normally would happen. I'm going to respond with anger, like it works. I don't know why I do it. I know, people. I don't get why I do it. Something that doesn't work so many times. But they were all up here with this, but I stayed here, just stayed loving. So it became obvious after a while that it was my daughter. And I asked her if I could share this. She said yes. So it was my daughter, and she was up here and I was down here, and it made it obvious that it wasn't me. And so she was sort of left with herself. And so I told her what I was doing. I said, I'm really trying to do this for the 70 days. She goes, I want to do that. I want to do that too. And so we're both doing it. We are both on the same, page. We're both trying to do it for the 70 days. And I'm really excited. So we're making a little calendar so we can check it off. I did it one day. Woohoo. Right now, actually, I am 5 days in a row I've been able to do it. Okay, now I wish I had said that because here we go. What I'm saying though is the point, I got lost in my own story. My point is God did that. That is not me. Trust me, I am 51. That is not me. When you can change, the older you get and you keep changing, that is God and there is nothing like it. And that's why he says, rescue me. The actual word is deliver my soul. Deliver my soul is the actual saying right there. So he's saying, I need to get out of here. I need to get out of this culture. I need to get out of myself. I need to get to you, God. I'm ready to start my journey. And he starts the whole thing. I worked my way backwards. He starts the whole thing with, I took my troubles to the Lord. I cried out and he answered my prayer. And I want to encourage you, if you want to experiment with this, I want to encourage you to rewrite this psalm for yourself. And when I say rewrite it, I'll tell you what I did. I didn't write it in the same style that they did. I would write, Dear God, and I'd start every single psalm the same way. Dear God, it's me talking to God. And I've always started all my journal entries that way for years and years and years. So I kept it the same for this. And I would say, God, here's all my troubles. This is wrong, and 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 this is... And to tell you the truth, there are many psalms where the psalmist does that. It could be 50, verses of all the troubles and all that's wrong before they finally say, but, or God help me. And that's what God wants us to do. He wants us to lay out our troubles before him. He wants you to do that. This is the way he wants you to communicate with him. That is why it's there. You are not bothering God. He is able to handle it. He's the only one that's able to handle it. Quite possibly, if you would lay out your troubles before God, you wouldn't have to lay out your troubles so much before your spouse or before your friends or before anybody else. We go to God with all of our troubles and we let him sort them through. Some of our troubles are our own sins. Some of them are things that are happening to us, but other people's sins against us. Some things are consequences from things that we've done in the past. Some things are just tests. We have a lot of troubles. It's hard to sort them all through. We're not smart enough. They're too wonderful for us. God has to help us. It's a wonderful practice. So I wrote out all of my troubles. God, please answer me. Please help me. Please rescue me. And then, rescue me from my stuff, my pride, the stuff I'm working on. I didn't write down the stuff that he was working on. I wrote down the stuff that I was working on. And then what are the consequences of those things? He talks about that, be pierced with sharp arrows and burned with glowing coals. And I think it's helpful even to write down what are the real consequences of these. A lot of what I learned that helped me lose weight was just to keep always in my mind the consequences of being overweight, the things I hated about, the things I felt, that the sickness I felt inside my body and the way that I looked and the clothes and all the stuff that you just forget, how your knees feel, or you feel lethargic, you feel sluggish, you feel whatever, you don't have enough energy for your kids, whatever it is. But writing out all those consequences of those things. Me right now, the pride, how it hurts my kids, how it hurts my family, it has hurt my ministry, how it has hurt the people around me, really listing out those consequences and working through those with God. So I encourage you to do that. And then if you can, go on to Psalm 121, and I'll end with this, and we'll come back, we'll kind of pick up on it later. In Psalm 121 it says, I look up to the mountains. Does my help come from there? My help comes from the Lord, who made heaven and earth. He will not let you stumble. The one who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel never slumbers or sleeps. The Lord himself watches over you. The Lord stands beside you as your protective shade. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord keeps you from all harm and watches over your life. The Lord keeps watch over you as you come and go, both now and forever. Oh my gosh, there's so much in here. So, we go from the song, the leaving psalm, and now it's the protection psalm. And I learned really some cool things about this. Basically, when you read this in the Hebrew, is what it's saying is fix your eyes. I look up. I look up above the mountains to the Lord. I fix my eyes on Jesus. And I learned this really cool thing, that when it's the capital Lord, and it's more complicated than what I'm going to say, you'd have to talk to a scholar about it. But what I learned is that when you see that Lord, it is the word they're trying to translate, because of course it doesn't translate right, and doesn't even work right in the Hebrew with all the syllables. But really, if you take that word, every time it says Lord, that's Jesus, really is what it is. And so whenever you see that word, you can think Jesus. And I even went back and replaced it. My help comes from Jesus, who made heaven and earth. We are walking up. We are looking up. We are fixing our eyes on Jesus. They were fixing their eyes up on the temple. They're going to Jerusalem. They're going to the temple. And so are we. Isn't that what Jesus said? Destroy this temple. I'll rebuild it in 3 days. And they killed him. And he was raised in 3 days. And we are now, he lives inside, right? So we are fixing our eyes. We are ascending to Jesus, always looking up. Where does my help come from? Not from my willpower, from God power. Reaching up and fixing our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, scorning its shame. It's just so amazing. I don't know how to communicate it better. But then it talks about how he will watch over us. That word, Lord, all the capitals, it's 5 times in this one passage. 5 times. In all the Songs of Ascent, it's 50 times used. It says he won't let you stumble. So as we're making this journey, he's going to keep picking you up. He's going to keep wiping you off. He's going to keep holding you up. Come on, you can do it. 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 Come on, disciple. He's fighting for you. He's watching over you. He watches over you, and he never sleeps. He never slumbers. I love it here when it says, the sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. And I was thinking about this, the sun by day, we can see how that would hurt, the sun scorching us, but how does the moon hurt at night? And it's kind of like he's saying, I'm going to protect you physically. Yes, I'm going to protect you from that scorching sun. But I'm also going to protect you spiritually from the terrors of the night. And I know I experience these. I have times where I wake up in the middle of the night and I don't know why, but every single fear and failure and accusation is just hurled at me all at once. I think it's just because my defenses are down. I'm tired, whatever it is. And I was just trying to describe it to Brooke today, and I was saying it's like a tornado in a movie, and in the fake tornadoes, and you'll see little things fly out of the tornado. You'll see a cow or a house or whatever, and I can picture that. Like I'll have this person or this situation or this whatever. My kid. All of my kids are in there somewhere, and then this person that over here in this situation that's unresolved, and all the stuff that's bearing down on me. And I don't know, I'll just wake up and all of a sudden I'll be attacked by it. And I realized I can fight that because I have Jesus. In the name of Jesus, I can fight that off, the terrors of the night, because the moon will not harm me by night. And I just go pray. I wake up, I just go, okay, God, thank you for my bed. Thank you for the night. Thank you for watching over me. Thank you that I am safe. And God, I just pray that, and I just start praying that I will believe the truth, whatever the truth is. I reject this lie. I reject that lie. I reject that. I trust in your promises. I reject this. I reject that. In the name of Jesus, take these terrors away from me. Take these thoughts out of my mind. Get them away from me. And I sort of can fight back because Jesus is watching over me. It says the Lord keeps you from all harm. Jesus keeps you from all harm and watches over your life. He will watch over you as you come and go, both now and forever. This is, and what a great way to end. So you want to rewrite, if you can, you rewrite these scriptures to God, speaking directly to Him, asking things of Him, but using the words of the psalmist to guide you. And somehow, I think it opens up a communication that, even if it's just another layer, just another way for you to hear something new. I can't believe how much I got out of this time. And I went on that livingword.com, and that really helped me. If you want to go on there, you can go on YouTube and he has a commentary for 120 and 121. And then another thing that somebody turned me on to, and I'll just end with this, is this podcast. I love it. It's called Bema, Bema. And it's another Messianic Jewish scholar who just teaches you how to think about, to think in the way that it was written for the Hebrews, and to think in a more Eastern way rather than our Western, sort of Greek culture way. And it just opens up all these new ideas that you can, I don't know, you can just totally geek out on it. I love it. You don't have to do it. I know I'm extreme, probably it's a little too extreme, but if you want to, those are some extra resources for you to get into. So anyway, the idea is that we're going to teach ourselves, we're going to keep going, we're going to teach ourselves how to be able to listen and discern God's voice and hear Him in new and great ways to deepen our intimacy with Him. And I hope this helps you to do that. Until next time.